my peoples. What's happening? Sorry. I don't know. I'm trying to. Okay. So let me see. What am I trying to do? Okay. So I seen this thing with Vivica Fox, and all right. Okay. So let's get down to it. Equality between men and women is not equivalency in what men and women want in dating. Equality is not equivalency. So in the description, I gave an example of equality versus equivalency. So if a man is 5'7" and a woman is 5'7", they are equal height. Yes, they are equal height. But there's no equivalency because even though they're equal height, she's tall for a woman. Tall. He's short for a man. Why? Because the average height of a man isn't equal to the average height of a woman, which means that a man and woman that size are equal in height, they're not equivalent, meaning that the same way that women want taller men is not equivalent to most men wanting taller women. A 5'7" man and woman that are equal height they're not equivalent. Like, they're just not equivalent. And this isn't just in height. I like to use height a lot because that's what most women are very clear about their dating standards, and height is one of the first things. So that's why I try to use height as a measurement where to let women know that yes, you could be equal height to a man, but that's not equivalent. Like, that doesn't mean that, the same way that you were going to desire a tall man, that you were desired as a tall woman. Now, why do I use the metaphor of height? Because I'm going to use the metaphor, I'm going to juxtapose that with age. So we clearly understand that a man and a woman can have the same height, but that does not make them equally or equivalently desirable to the opposite sex. Okay, so now let's juxtapose that to age. Women like silver foxes. Women like older men. And because the definition of equality in America means that 100% the same. So the same way that I'm telling you that a man and woman can both be 5'7", but the woman is considered tall and the man is considered short, then that brings me to this Vivica Fox example. Women like older men that dress nice, that are established. And they typically don't care sometimes. This man could be out of shape. So because women are attracted to men that are over 50, that might be overweight, but because they're financially stable, women assume that that's the equivalent of what a man wants. Women assume because they like men that are a little bit older, that know how to dress, and that are financially stable, that that's what men want. I assure you that a man that has options and that has enough confidence and charisma to attract the woman that he wants, there is nothing he can do with that woman. He is not attracted to that woman that is older, that knows how to dress, that's stable, in the same way that most men are not attracted to women that are taller. It's just biology. So again, yes, a man and woman can both be equally the same height. A man and woman can equally be 5'7", but 5'7" is tall on a woman and 5'7" is short on a man. 60 years old with a good job is desirable to women, not so desirable to men. That's why this Vivica Fox thing, it just doesn't make sense. And what'll often happen is when men tell women what we desire in mass. This is it's the micro macro inversion. When a lot of men tell women what we want as a collective, then the woman will go to an example. She'll say, well, I know one person who's 60 who got married. Now, that one person is the exception to the rule. That one person can be an extreme minority, but just because it's a possibility, that's all the woman needs to hear. But it doesn't make sense, though, right? Because if we tell that same woman that, hey, I had a friend that, that didn't get married, I had a male friend that didn't get married. Or if we tell her that we have several relatives that are female that are over 60 that don't have spouses, they're going to say, well, not all people. That doesn't apply to all people. And this is the problem we have with women. When you're telling them something that a collective of men say, they'll point to the one person, the one example, and use that to debunk all of the men that are telling them something. But in reverse, when you as a man, when you tell them your personal experience, then they say, oh, that's not all men. That's why we can never get anywhere with women. Like, if you're talking about micro, they talk about macro. If you're talking about macro, then they go to micro. That's why it took me a while to understand that's what's going on. If you say, hey, most of the men that I know don't like tattoos, they'll say, hey, well, Johnny doesn't care and he likes tattoos. And you'll go, okay. So you're telling a woman what most men say about what they want in faithful women, or to be faithful. You could tell a woman, hey, look, most of the guys that I know that make 100,000, this is what they're looking for. Then they're going to talk about, oh, well, Johnny doesn't care about that. And you're going to go, but I'm telling you about the majority of men that I know, not just one or two. That's a problem within a community. That's why we can't communicate. It's like a circle with women. You talk about men in general, what we want, they'll try to tell you that they know one guy that thinks the opposite. And that one guy that they know that's the opposite of the majority of men, that'll become the exception to the rule. When you tell them, hey, well, I'm one guy that thinks this way. So when you think that your experience as a singular person will get the same value as that, that one person that they always, this is why, I'm gonna be honest, this is why communication between men and women is so faulty, because it's almost impossible sometimes when you're communicating with the modern lady to just get her to stick to the topic, stick to the subject. If we're talking about, hey, at a barbershop, if I'm a man, I'm 40, every time I go to a barbershop, this is what men say. Then they're going to say, oh, but I know one guy that says different. So what's more important? The group of guys that men talk to that are all on one accord, or the one guy that she knows that probably is telling her what she wants to hear because he wants to sleep with her? You see what I'm saying? Like, that's a part of the issue we're having in the communication. When we're telling women, we could give a woman a blueprint exactly how to win. We could say 99.9% of men want this. This is what 99.9%. But they'll go, but what about that 1%? And we're going, who fucking cares? This is what most guys want. Then what they'll do is focus on that 1% of guy that's the outlier, and focus on the outlier. Then if there's another topic when you are talking about the outlier, they'll dismiss you and say, well, you're just one person. That's not all men. I promise you, that's why relationships and that's why communication in men and women don't go anywhere. When men talk about micro, when we're talking about something individual, then women will discount it and say, well, that's just an individual opinion. Everybody doesn't think that. Then when you, as a man, when you tell her this is what the collective of men say, then they're going to talk about the one person that's the outlier and say, well, I know one person that thinks differently. I promise you that this is the issue in communication. I promise you that this is what's happening. This is what's happening. I see it on podcasts all the time, but because men, we just communicate differently, and I think we get so frustrated with women and talking to them that we haven't been able to take a chance and step back and evaluate the communication. But I promise you, it's a micro and macro imbalance. When men are talking about topics from the macro perspective, then the woman will say, well, she'll give you a micro experience. Well, no, I know one person, and she'll dismiss the information she'll dismiss the macro information. Then when you focus on the micro, the singular, when you say, okay, well, I know a guy that does this, and when you start proving your point, she'll go, well, that's not all guys. You can't problem solve if when you're talking about a specific problem that we're having, they dismiss the masses with one singular example, and then when you have an example of a singular, then they discount it and say all men don't think like that. That's a circular conversation. That's what's been happening with men and women. Circular conversations where it goes, well, I know this one guy, or not all men. That's ridiculous. It's almost manipulative in a sense to where the conversation is not even geared around solution. It's just geared around being in residual friction. So again, equivalency and equality is not the same. A man and a woman can both be 5'7", but 5'7" for a woman is tall, 5'7" for a man is short. Why? Because the average man is 5'9" and the average woman is 5'4". So therefore, what would be more equivalent? 5'7" and 5'7", 5'7" man, 5'7" women and men aren't equivalent. A 5'9" man and a 5'4" woman are more equivalent. Why? Because they both represent their equally average height of both gender. That's an example of why we're not equal. Men and women are not equal, not because we have higher or lower values, because we have different mean averages in everything. Men and women have a different mean average in height. Because men and women have a different average in height, it is impossible to compare the height of. Same thing with emotionality. Men and women have a different level of threshold of emotionality because of testosterone and estrogen. You can't compare. I mean, we're different biologically. We're the same species, but we're very different with our emotionality, our logic, our physiology, our biology. We're just different. And we keep trying to compare each other as if biology doesn't exist. And that's failing women. And it's not right, because it's leading women to a trap, and it's making them feel lonely, and it's making them think that they can have an equal outcome to a 60-year-old man, because women like and know that they're attracted to 60-year-old men that are established by their career. They automatically think that that's the equivalency of what men want. It's not. Equality and equivalency aren't the same. There is no equity in comparing different means between men and women.